Hello everybody! Thank you so much for joining me on my channel today. Today I have my first layout that I created using the My Creative Scrapbook limited edition kit for September. This month the limited edition kit features the My Sweet collection by Prima, and I'm using one of the pear tree cut files that are available each month. As soon as I saw this house cut file, I knew I was going to be backing it. So I used the pattern papers in the collection and I backed it. And now I'm creating my background. I have a sheet of 120-pound smooth white cardstock. I coated it already with some white gesso, and now I'm using some distress oxides. I have both sprays and pads. Right now I'm using Worn lipstick. This is a spray, and I'm spreading that on the background. I'm trying to be really careful not to make the background too dark. I'm using the same colors, or some of the same colors that are in the pattern papers that are in the cut file, so I don't want to overwhelm the cut file with the background being too dark. Now I'm adding a color called Tattered Rose. I am using the pad for this one, so I'm just spreading some on a piece of plastic and adding some water and using it the same way that I would the spray, using the packaging technique. And I like to keep trying the cut file back on top of the background just to see how it's working out and how the cut file looks against the paint. I'm splattering some water on the background, and that lifts up some of the distress oxide and just makes a cool kind of like water droplet effect. Here I'm using a stencil that I made on my Silhouette Cameo, and I just wanted to see how this would look. So I'm trying the stencil, which as you can see is a very small flower, with the dauber and some ink. And I'm using the same color here. I believe this is the Tattered Rose. Because it's the same color, I don't expect that adding the flowers to the stencil will make a huge difference in the background, but it adds a little something. So I move around the whole area of color that I have in the background and I add a few flowers. This technique can make a really big difference on your background if you're using different colors, but for this layout, it's just a very subtle touch. So I'm going back in with another stencil. This time I'm using Bundled Sage, but I only want a really small touch of green. So I'm using a stencil that has extremely small openings. I don't know what the manufacturer is on this stencil. I got it Tuesday morning a while back, but it almost looks like really, really small leaves to me. So again, just putting a tiny bit of color just so that the background isn't one color. There's nothing wrong with the background being one color, but I just felt like I wanted to add a little bit of green. And since I don't film myself backing a cut file, I just wanted to mention that in the roof, I use strips of a very simple Fiskars scalloped border punch, and I layered them on top of each other to make it look like the shingles on a roof. It was really not complicated at all. I'm adding some white splatters here. And that's something that I just like to do. It just adds another layer of interest and variation to the background. And then, of course, some splatters. And again, these are all the same colors, so it's not adding a different color, but it is adding something of interest. I wanted to add a pink that was a little bit darker in the background so that you could see some of the splatters. So I added in a little bit of Barn Door, just a tiny bit, because that's more of a red color and I didn't want the background to be red, but I did want to make a slightly more intense pink, especially because there are touches of this color in the collection. And then to finish off the background, I'm putting a few more water droplets on there. And I'm really happy that the background turned out to be what I envisioned, which was subtle, because sometimes I've been known to kind of overdo it on the color. Now I'm going to begin layering some papers to make the background. So that yellow piece of paper is just a piece of unwanted paper that I had in my stash. You could use any piece of paper. You don't have to have a piece of paper in the background, but when I'm layering all of these gutted pieces of paper together, I would rather mount them to a complete piece of paper than to mount a whole bunch of gutted pieces of paper together. Sometimes I run into trouble with that because they're a little flimsy. So I keep a stack of pattern papers that I know I won't use handy. I also chose a piece of dark green cardstock from my stash. I thought that was a good match for the collection. I took my background and I cut it down to size so it would be only a slight bit smaller than the green piece of paper. I just want a really thin border. I put a lot of adhesive on the back because it is a thick piece of paper, and there is some very, very slight warping, but I did run that whole background through a laminator so that it would flatten it out, and it works really well for that. So this is the photo I'm going to be using. This is of my little dog Rory. She is an Australian cattle dog mix, and she's about 35 pounds. We adopted her last year, I guess. We're coming up on a year that we've had her, and it's hard to imagine our family without her already. I'm calling this Love This Life. This is from the collection, and both we love this life with her in it, and hopefully she loves it as well. Now I'm using some of the chipboard pieces and the ephemera pieces, and I'm adding to the flowers that are already on the cut file. I'm also adding some die cut leaves to the background. At first I was thinking I might leave the leaves white and kind of extend the cut file in a way they would match in, but in the end I decided that I wanted to add a little bit more color by using the leaves. And the dye that I used for this is a Pinkfresh Studio dye. I have so many dyes in my stash that I don't know the manufacturer of, and I always feel bad about that. So I can leave the information in the description box for this dye so that if you like it, it is readily available. So now I'm using some Distress Oxides to add some color to the leaves. I start with some bundled sage. This color goes really well with this collection. And then I use some rustic wilderness. I feel that usually leaves are probably lighter on the outside and darker on as you get closer to the stem. But in this particular case, I just wanted to make sure that there was contrast between the leaves and the background. So I just made the tips a little bit darker. And now I'm just tucking those leaves back into the spots that I had them before. And of course, making any adjustments that I feel are necessary as I go along. I added some of the birds that were in the kit, and I love the way they're facing each other and facing in opposite directions. I'm also going to be adding in some butterflies, and I'm also adding in a few of these sentiments. The sentiments say, "Sweet love" and "My sweetie." The birds are from the chipboard pack in the kit, and then the butterflies and the sentiments are from the ephemera pack. I inked the edges of the two sentiments using some Rustic Wilderness Distress Oxide, and then I used some ATG adhesive to attach them down. I always like to reinforce chipboard pieces, so I put a little bit more adhesive on the back of the birds and also the chipboard flowers that are framing the photo. I always like to give a little bit of dimension to the butterflies on the layout, so I'm using some fun foam or adhesive foam. On the larger butterfly, I'm popping up the wings and not popping up the center, and then I put some adhesive on it and press it down, and that helps the wings to pop up. On this smaller butterfly, though, I'm just popping it up with a little bit of foam and attaching that down. I also want the title to be a little more prominent, so I'm using some foam behind that as well. I'm looking at the date of this photo. This photo was taken just 2 days after we got her. We usually have fairly big dogs, not huge dogs, but a little on the bigger side. So she seems so small to us compared to our other dogs, but she has such a personality. She's very, very active, and she definitely can keep up with the bigger dogs. I never thought we would have 3 dogs, but I have to say she was the perfect addition to our family and gets along really well with both Coco and Jackson, who we've had now for about 3 years. But I think that 3 dogs is our limit, so no more dogs for right now. Attaching down those leaves, I'm using ATG adhesive just in case I want to move them around a little bit. And then I was thinking that I wanted to add a touch of yellow to the background. There are some touches of yellow in the pattern paper, but you can't really see them in the way that I use the pattern papers, so I decided to take out some of my very small punches and scattered straw Distress Oxide, and I'm using the dauber here to spread some of that ink onto this piece of scrap cardstock. These punches are called Punch-a-Bunch. They're hydrangea flowers, and this punch is available in a couple of different sizes. I have the smallest size and the medium size, and I think that they're perfect for layering on top of each other and using them as little accents around the layout. These were very inexpensive punches. I got these on eBay. On this layout, I layered the smaller flowers on top of the larger ones. They're so tiny that they're a little bit difficult to manipulate, so I did end up using a little pointy tool to help layer them and help to put them where I wanted them on the layout. So I didn't show me spreading them around. It was rather time consuming, but like I said, I layered them and then I just distributed them across the layout wherever I thought that a little touch of yellow would look nice. As you may know, each month the limited edition kit comes with 3 packs of flowers, usually Prima or 49 in Market. This month they were Prima flowers and they match beautifully with this collection. On this particular layout though, I just used this one rose that I thought went really well, and I just used it to accent the title. I really love adding pearls to the background. These are self-adhesive pearls that I'm using today. I love the color that they add, and I love the fact that they add a different texture to the background. So I'm using 2 different pearls today. I'm using some pink pearls that I'm putting in the centers of some of the flowers that were part of the cut file. And then I'm using some really, really small pearls to put in the centers of those small yellow flowers that I cut out. I want to pop up the entire cut file, so I am using some fun foam. I use larger pieces, and then I go back in and use a bunch of the little scraps that I have in my drawer, and I was happy to use those up and completely cover the back of this cut file. I covered it with ATG adhesive. I position it on my page. I was trying to decide what I should put in the center of this particular flower that's up on top. It's kind of a quarter of a circle, so at first I was thinking that I would put a large pearl and then put smaller pearls around it. In the end though, I ended up just putting one of the larger pearls, and I do that later on off camera. I added a bow to the top of that large heart on the cut file. That's just something that was in my stash, and then I added just a couple more of the little yellow flowers. I glued them on there, and then I added these very, very tiny pearls to the center as I did the other flowers that are on the layout, and that was the very last touch. I really hope that you enjoyed this video. If you did, I hope that you'll give it a thumbs up. It really helps me out. And I also wanted to let you know that in the description box is the link to the My Creative Scrapbook website. This is the limited edition kit. There are several other beautiful kits. They're all different and they're all unique. If you have any questions about anything that you saw in this video, please feel free to leave me a comment. I try to answer those as soon as possible. I will be back soon with some more videos of more layouts that I made using the September limited edition kit. I hope everybody has a fantastic day, and I'll see you soon. Take care, everybody. Bye-bye.